Yes, ma'am.
And was this a reel, meaning it was like a video that was posted to social media?
Yes, ma'am.
And is he referring to the attempted murder that happened on his life on October 7th of 2023 where he was shot in the foot?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall any other time where he was shot in the foot?
No, ma'am.
From that same post, Charles Jones is making this hand gesture. Is this what you were referring to when you said that 6 block may throw a 6?
Yes, ma'am.
Foolio's best friend, the same homie who grew up with him, who ran with him in Jacksonville streets, who was there. On the night they killed Foolio, walked into a federal courtroom in Tampa and sat his ass in the witness chair and told the state everything he knew about who pulled the trigger on his best friend. Y'all need to hear this. Kenny Capps, Jamal Howard, Robert Howard, whatever name you want to call him, this man has prior violent offenses on his record, including manslaughter and aggravated assault. He was locked up in federal custody on drug charges of 50 grams or more of methamphetamine, facing a minimum mandatory of 10 years to life in federal prison. And the moment that sentencing pressure hit, this man picked up the phone on the Fed's terms and walked into that courtroom and put Foolio's killers on the stand. The streets been buzzing, rappers been talking, and today we breaking all of it down, no filter, no cap, all facts. This is the story of how Foolio's closest homie became the prosecution's star witness, what exactly he said under oath, how the defense tried to tear him apart, what one of the alleged killers told Kenny Capps on the phone hours after Foolio's body was still warm, and how the rap culture is reacting to watching a Jacksonville street figure take that stand in open court. Let me break it down for y'all from the very beginning. To understand why this moment in that courtroom hit so different, you gotta understand who Charles Jones was. Charles Andrew Jones II, born June 21st, 1998, in Jacksonville, Florida. Grew up in the Moncrief neighborhood on the north side of Jax. His pops, Charles Jones Sr., was murdered when Charles Jr. was just 13 years old. That trauma set the tone for everything that came after it. Foolio came up in the 6-block set of the KTA gang, KTA standing for Kill Them All. And Jacksonville, fam, people sleep on Jacksonville like it's some quiet southern city. No cap, Jacksonville was producing some of the most raw, most violent, most real drill music this country had seen since Chicago was on fire. The reason for that? A beef so deep it put the whole city on the national map. It goes back to 2017. Foolio's 18-year-old cousin Zion Brown was killed in a home invasion, robbed and shot dead. That single murder lit the fuse because Youngeen Ace, the rival rapper from Orange Park running with ATK, which the streets know as Ace's top killers, his crew was tied to that killing. And everything that happened after that, everything spiraled from that one night. In June 2018, Foolio's side caught Youngeen Ace, his brother, and 2 of his friends leaving a steakhouse celebrating somebody's birthday. They lit that car up. Trayvon Bullard, Ace's brother, was killed. 2 more homies in the car were killed. Ace was the only one who survived. And Foolio, he posted derogatory content about the victims on social media. He was 19 years old, no filter, no fear. From there, it just kept escalating. Foolio got shot, then shot again, then again. Then again after that. This man survived 4 separate attempts on his life over the course of years. He used to say on Instagram Live, "I can't die dummy, I got voodoo on me." The beef produced diss tracks that went platinum. Youngeen Ace released Who I Smoke, a remix of 1,000 Miles, calling out dead KTA members by name. Foolio fired back with When I See You, a remix of Fantasia. The Florida drill scene was born from this beef. Real recognize real. This beef was as authentic as it gets. These were not rap ops. These were real ops. Now enter Kenny Capps, Jamal Howard, known on the streets as Kenny Capps. He grew up in the same Jacksonville neighborhoods as Foolio. These 2 went back to childhood. Kenny Capps was not some peripheral associate. This man was part of Foolio's inner circle. He was at the birthday celebration in Tampa the night Foolio was murdered. He was there. And that fact alone is what made him the most important witness in this entire trial. June 23, 2024. Foolio just turned 26 years old the day before. He and his crew drove from Jacksonville down to Tampa to celebrate. They had an Airbnb pool party set up, but authorities shut it down for exceeding occupancy limits. So now they're scrambling at night trying to find somewhere to stay. That scramble cost Foolio his life. Here's what y'all need to understand about this ambush. The prosecution laid it out in court. These four defendants, Isaiah Chance, Sean Gathright, Rashad Murphy, and Davion Murphy, all from Jacksonville, all connected to ATK and a gang called 1200. They had been tracking Foolio's location all day. Foolio was posting his birthday plans in real time on Instagram stories. His location, his moves, everything, and his ops were watching every single story. Surveillance footage shows the defendants' vehicles arriving at multiple locations where Foolio's group was present throughout the evening. This was not random. This was a coordinated, targeted ambush that followed this man across the state. Tampa police detective testimony said there were no other stops on the route from Jacksonville to Tampa, indicating these men drove from Jax to Tampa for one purpose only: to catch Foolio lacking. At approximately 3 a.m., Foolio's group was in the parking lot of a Home 2 Suites hotel in Tampa, trying to book rooms after getting shut out of the Airbnb. That's when the gunmen appeared, masked, armed with pistols with extended high-capacity magazines and rifles fitted with brass catchers. They unloaded. Dozens of rounds fired into the parking lot. Foolio was struck in the heart, lungs, and aorta. He didn't survive. 3 other people were injured in the attack. The medical examiner testified about the gunshot wounds on Foolio's body. The shot that killed him went straight through his heart. At 26 years old on his birthday, Charles Jones was gone.
In the early morning hours of Sunday, June 23rd, Jacksonville rapper Charles Jones arrived at Teaser's Gentlemen's Club in Tampa for a paid performance.
He's the gentleman wearing the red beanie hat.
That's Tampa Police Homicide Detective Juan Ramos identifying the rapper, known as Julio Foolio, in new surveillance video from the club's parking lot. Suspects Alicia Andrews, Isaiah Chance, and Sean Gathright watched this video in court Thursday, too. All 3 faced charges in Jones's death in what investigators say was an ongoing rival gang war. After leaving Teasers, the rapper went down the street to Truth 18 nightclub for an after party, posting on social media in live time.
This is the video here from his Instagram.
Surveillance video from outside that club shows how 2 suspect vehicles continued to follow Jones, just as they did at Teasers, and eventually to the Home 2 Suites near USF.
They're approaching the victim's position on foot.
Video from the hotel and a parked Tesla show 3 shooters firing several shots at the vehicle Jones was riding in, killing him.
Now here's where it gets crazy. One of the defendants, Isaiah Chance, had his girlfriend Alicia Andrews with him. She wasn't shooting, she was the lookout. She was tracking Foolio's location and feeding information to the shooters. In October 2025, a jury already found Alicia Andrews guilty of manslaughter for her role as the lookout. She got convicted before the main trial even started. That right there told you where this case was heading. Before Kenny Capps even walked into that courtroom, this trial was already a movie. Let me lay out what the prosecution had built. Surveillance footage. Multiple cameras captured masked gunmen exiting vehicles and opening fire at the hotel complex. Clear, damning footage. Cell phone data, tracking the defendants' movements from Jacksonville to Tampa, showing them following Foolio's group from location to location throughout the night. Phone data showed no detours, straight from Jax to Tampa, ghost protocol type shit. DNA evidence. A rifle recovered from the scene. DNA on the non-adhesive side of the tape wrapped around the weapon. Tested as a mixture from at least 4 individuals, with one major contributor identified as defendant Sean Gathright. That's your weapon. That's your DNA. That's game over type evidence right there. And then here's where it gets wild. The defendants were out here self-snitching on Instagram. Bro, within hours of Foolio's murder, the JSO gang unit detective Christopher Drabeck testified that defendant Rashad Murphy was allegedly posting celebratory content on his Instagram. He posted a photo of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick celebrating a Super Bowl with the caption, "Hate me kindly." The prosecution said that was Rashad Murphy celebrating Foolio's death. The internet went crazy when that came out.
One of the suspects accused in the shooting death of Jacksonville rapper Foolio made an appearance in court Thursday morning in Tampa. Rashad Murphy has now been granted 30 minutes of visitation per week with his child and his significant other. Murphy was previously in solitary confinement and wasn't able to visit his family as a result.
And Davion Murphy, they played his interrogation video in open court. In that video, Davion Murphy told detectives that Foolio's diss tracks had physically harmed his family, said his auntie was depressed and bedridden behind the music, said his grandmother caught a heart attack because of the songs Foolio was making. And then, after the detective left the interrogation room, Davion Murphy reportedly mimed firing a rifle at the interrogator on camera. On camera, in a murder interrogation, after talking about how music hurt his family. No cap, the prosecution was looking like geniuses just playing the tape. But then defense attorneys started chipping away. Lack of visual identification of the shooters. No search warrants for certain properties. Uncertainty about who controlled certain digital accounts. The defense was trying to poke holes everywhere they could. That's when the prosecution needed someone who was actually there that night. Someone from Foolio's inner circle who could speak to what happened. Someone who could testify not just about the shooting itself, but about what was said after. That's when Kenny Capps took the stand on day 7 of the trial. Day 7. The courtroom in Tampa is full. This is the moment everybody on social media was waiting for. The prosecution calls Jamal Howard to the stand, the man the streets know as Kenny Capps, Foolio's childhood best friend. He walks up there and he's sitting across from 4 men charged with first-degree murder, 4 men facing the death penalty, and he opens his mouth. He testified that he and Foolio had known each other since they were kids, growing up in the same Jacksonville neighborhood. He went down to Tampa with the group to celebrate Foolio's birthday. He described leaving a club and riding in a separate car toward the hotel complex where the shooting happened. And then, his exact words when the prosecutor asked him what he experienced. "I hear the shots go off, I duck." That's it. That's the whole thing in 6 words. "I hear the shots go off, I duck." He said he did not see the gunman directly. He dropped to the ground immediately when the shooting started. And that might sound like a minor testimony on the surface, but fam, it's what came after the shooting that made Kenny Capps the most important witness in this entire trial. Because Kenny Capps testified that after Foolio was killed, he got a phone call from defendant Rashad Murphy. And in that phone call, Rashad Murphy told him he forgives him. Rashad Murphy said, "He seen me." He said stuff like he had spotted Kenny Capps that night, walking down the stairs of the club. Prosecutor: "What did he say during the call itself?" Kenny Capps: "He forgives me again, he forgives me, and where was I?" Prosecutor: "Did you understand what 'where were you' meant?" Kenny Capps: "Where was I? I was around, stuff like he seen me, walking down the stairs of the club, I guess." Let me break this down for y'all. One of the men accused of orchestrating Foolio's murder called Foolio's best friend after the shooting and essentially confirmed he was in Tampa that night by asking where Kenny Capps was, a detail only someone who was physically present at or near the scene would know to ask. This is major. This is not some random tip line situation. This is a defendant placing himself at the scene through his own phone call to a witness. The prosecution got exactly what they needed from Kenny Capps. But hold on, because the defense was ready. Defense attorneys immediately went at Kenny Capps' credibility the moment they got their turn. And here's the real tea on why this matters so much. Because Kenny Capps is not some clean, law-abiding citizen who just happened to witness a crime. Not even close. Kenny Capps, real name Robert Howard III, is 22 years old and currently sitting in federal custody. In July 2024, just weeks after Foolio was murdered, Kenny Capps was indicted by federal prosecutors on 2 counts of distributing 50 grams or more of pure methamphetamine. The U.S. Attorney Roger Handberg's office announced the charges. The ATF, FBI, and Jacksonville Sheriff's Office were all involved in the investigation. If convicted on all counts, Kenny Capps was looking at a minimum mandatory sentence of 10 years and potentially life in federal prison. On top of that drug indictment, he had prior violent offenses on his record: manslaughter, aggravated assault. This is a man with serious criminal history who was sitting in federal custody facing life when he decided to come forward and testify. The defense pointed all of this out in cross-examination. They argued that Kenny Capps only came forward with information about conversations with the defendants once he was facing federal sentencing. That his testimony was not about loyalty to his fallen best friend. It was about saving his own skin, self-interest masquerading as justice type shit. And look, that is the classic playbook when it comes to impeaching a cooperating witness. And the street's been having this exact conversation on Twitter, on YouTube, in comment sections across the internet. Because this is the central moral and strategic debate around Kenny Capps on the stand. Is he a snitch, or is he getting justice for his best friend? That's the line in the sand. And that line looks different depending on where you're standing. Fam, when the clip of Kenny Capps on the stand started making the rounds, the rap internet went fully into debate mode. No cap, this is one of those situations where people's whole worldview gets exposed based on how they react. Let me break down what the culture has been saying. First, you got to understand the backdrop of where hip-hop is right now with the snitching conversation. Fat Joe, in a 2026 interview for Complex's Hip-Hop Media Power Rankings, was asked what he hates about rap right now. You know what he said? Too much snitching in rap. This came out literally the same week the Kenny Caps clip went viral, and everybody was applying it directly to this situation. Now here's where I keep it 100 with y'all. The reactions broke down into a few distinct camps. These are the voices coming from a strict street code perspective. The position is simple. You don't testify. Doesn't matter what happened to your homie. Doesn't matter who did it. You don't go to that stand and put information in the state's hands. Period. These commentators, and there are plenty of them on YouTube, on podcast circuits, in comment sections, are calling Kenny Caps out directly. The argument is, if Foolio was your brother since childhood, you don't let the government use you as a tool. You handle it or you don't handle it, but you don't sit in a federal courtroom under oath. The timing of it makes it worse in these folks' eyes, because Kenny Caps didn't volunteer information immediately. He was already facing 10 years to life on federal meth charges when he suddenly had information to share. The defense's framing that this was about reducing his own sentence, not about honoring Foolio, has found real resonance in this camp. Then you got another camp, and this one has been getting louder, especially with everything that happened in the Young Thug YSL Ryko trial, with the Diddy situation, with all of these big high-profile cases playing out in real time. And the argument from this camp is, why does the code only protect the people who took the life? Foolio is dead. He can't speak for himself. 4 men, Isaiah Chance, Sean Gathright, Rashad Murphy, and Davian Murphy, are facing the death penalty for what they allegedly did to him, and Kenny Caps was there. He survived. He has information that could result in justice for his best friend who was ambushed and shot through his heart on his 26th birthday. From this perspective, sitting silent is not loyalty. It's letting the ops walk free. And the question these commentators are asking is, what exactly is the code protecting here? Because Foolio is gone regardless of what happens in that courtroom. The question is whether the people who took him get held accountable. And then there's a third perspective, fam, the one that accounts for all the context. This is the perspective that says, Kenny Caps was facing life in federal prison. The feds had him. Not local charges, federal charges with mandatory minimums, with the ATF, the FBI, and JSO all coming at him simultaneously. When the feds grab you and you're 22 years old looking at life, the street code meets a reality that most people discussing it from the outside have never actually faced. The same Rolling Stone piece about the Atlanta rap scene and the snitching obsession made an interesting point, that the rap internet's fixation on calling out snitching has sometimes been more about internet credibility than about actual understanding of how the federal system operates and what it does to young men from the streets. Because the feds don't play like local prosecutors. The feds get convictions at a rate that dwarfs state courts. And when you're young black from Jacksonville with a violent record staring at life in prison, the conversation about what you do next becomes a lot more complicated than any Twitter thread can capture. Kenny Caps was in the building when his best friend got shot to death. He was in federal custody. He had information, and he used it. Whether you call that snitching or survival or justice, that's for each person to decide. But it happened, and it's changed the trajectory of this trial. Here's where y'all need to understand the strategic significance of what Kenny Caps provided the prosecution beyond just his emotional testimony. The prosecution already had surveillance footage, DNA on a rifle, cell phone data, and self-incriminating social media posts. What they were potentially lacking was a human being, someone from inside Foolio's world who could speak to the nature of these relationships, the context of the gang war, and most critically, what the defendants said and did in the immediate aftermath of the murder. Kenny Caps gave them all three. His testimony about Rashad Murphy calling him after the shooting and essentially placing himself at the scene, even through the veiled, coded language of "where were you" and "he's seen me," is the kind of thing that sticks with a jury, because it's human, because it's conversation, because surveillance footage doesn't talk. A phone call from a murder suspect asking the victim's best friend where they were that night. That talks. That's the kind of evidence that makes juries lean forward in their chairs. Now, the defense had legitimate points to make about Kenny Caps' credibility, his criminal history, his pending federal charges, the timing of when he came forward. These are all real vulnerabilities in his testimony, and the defense hammered every single one of them. In any serious criminal defense situation, you attack the character and the motive of the cooperating witness. That's the job. But here's the thing. The prosecution doesn't need the jury to believe that Kenny Caps is a saint. They need the jury to believe that the core of what he said is true. And when his testimony is stacked on top of DNA evidence, surveillance footage, cell phone data, and the defendant's own celebratory Instagram posts made hours after the murder, the credibility math still lands in the state's favor. That's the prosecutorial strategy. Kenny Capps is not the whole case. He's the final piece that humanizes a mountain of forensic evidence. And y'all need to remember, the preliminary verdict has already come in on one defendant adjacent to this case. Alicia Andrews, Chance's girlfriend who acted as the lookout, was already found guilty of manslaughter in October 2025. That conviction tells you the foundation of the prosecution's case was already solid before day 7 even happened. Kenny Capps just added another layer. Let me zoom out for a second because there's a bigger conversation happening inside of this story that goes way beyond Jacksonville and Tampa and this specific trial. Foolio was not just a rapper who got killed. He was a product of a cycle of violence that goes back years. A cycle that claimed his father when he was 13, that claimed his cousin Zion Brown in 2017, that claimed his younger brother Bibby, that wounded him 4 separate times before they finally caught him in Tampa. This cycle, the KTA versus ATK beef, has been so destructive that it wasn't just rappers dying. A 7-year-old child, Breon Allen Jr., was walking alongside his cousin in Jacksonville in January 2025 and got shot and killed in what authorities linked to the same gang war that killed Foolio. A 7-year-old gang. That's the real weight of what this beef has left behind. This trial is not just about 4 men and a murder. It's the legal endpoint of a decade-long war that ate up Jacksonville's north side. It's drill music used as evidence of motive. Prosecutors literally played Foolio's diss tracks and Young Ace's diss tracks in court to establish motive and gang affiliation. It's Instagram stories used to track a murder victim's location in real time. It's social media posts used to prove celebratory intent hours after a killing. This is what the intersection of street life, social media, and the justice system looks like in 2026. And then there's Kenny Capps, Foolio's best friend since childhood. The man who was there when the shots rang out and dropped to the ground. The man who got that phone call from Rashad Murphy afterward. The man who, facing life in federal prison on drug charges, walked into a Tampa courtroom on day 7 of a capital murder trial and told his truth. The streets are going to debate this forever. Real ones are going to have opinions. The rap internet is going to keep arguing about the code and what it means and who violated it and who's justified. Fat Joe said too much snitching in rap. But there's also a counter-argument that says too many people are getting away with taking lives because the code of silence protects killers while the dead can't speak. Here's my take, and keep it 100. Foolio lived his whole life in the middle of a war. He survived 4 attempts. He rapped about death constantly, about the paranoia, about knowing his ops were out there waiting. Vulture described his 2019 mixtape, Never Wanted Fame, as being preoccupied with death. He knew the risks. He knew what that life carried. And at 26 years old on his birthday, they finally caught him in a parking lot in Tampa. Now the question is whether justice gets served, whether the men who allegedly stalked him across state lines, tracked his Instagram stories, and ambushed him in a hotel parking lot face the consequences the law says they should. And the answer to that question might hinge on what a jury thinks about a childhood friend who sat in that witness chair and chose to talk. Whether you see Kenny Capps as a snitch or a soldier for his dead homie, that's between you, your conscience, and your understanding of what loyalty actually means when somebody takes your best friend away from you and nobody is doing time for it. The trial continues. More testimony is expected. The defense still has time to present their case and challenge every piece of evidence the prosecution put forward. But right now, based on everything in that courtroom, the DNA, the surveillance footage, the cell phone data, the self-snitching Instagram posts, the interrogation tape, and now Kenny Capps on the stand revealing that phone call from Rashad Murphy. The prosecution is sitting heavy. Isaiah Chance, Sean Gathright, Rashad Murphy, and Davian Murphy all pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. They face the death penalty if convicted. The judge presiding over this case has seen it all by now, and there's still more to come. Y'all, this situation is still developing. This trial is live, and we're going to keep following it as the verdict comes in and the bigger implications for the Jacksonville rap scene play out. Because this isn't over. This isn't just one trial. Young Ace has not been charged in connection with this murder. Law enforcement said they're always watching, but no charges have come down. The beef that started with Zion Brown's death in 2017 has claimed so many lives it's hard to count them all. And now it's playing out in open court with the whole world watching. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Do you think Kenny Capps was right to testify? Do you think the street code still holds in situations like this? Or has this beef gone so far? A 7-year-old child dead, multiple rappers dead, families destroyed, that the code itself needs to be re-examined. Real recognize real. Comment below. Share this with somebody who needs to hear the full story. And subscribe so you don't miss the verdict when it drops. Because when those 4 men find out whether they're spending the rest of their lives on death row, we're going to be right here breaking it all the way down. Stay locked in. This is far from over.